Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Can I ask you something? When was the last time someone in your life made you feel like your feelings were too much? Too sensitive, too dramatic, too needy, and yet somehow never quite enough? When was the last time you spoke honestly about your pain and were met with a blank stare, a sigh, or a sudden change of subject that left you wondering if you had imagined the whole conversation? If you are nodding right now, if something in your chest just quietly tightened, then I want you to know something before we go any further. You are not crazy, you are not too much, and you are not alone. Today, we are going to talk about something that nobody tells you when you are trying to heal from a relationship with a narcissist. Something that sounds almost too simple to be true. And that is this: your silence, your beautiful, chosen, intentional silence, is one of the most powerful things you can ever do. Not for them, for you. But as a side effect, it does something to the narcissist's ego that no argument, no confrontation, no ultimatum ever could. Stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you are going to understand why, and that understanding is going to change something for you. You have lived a full life. You have raised children, maybe. Built a career, perhaps. Buried people you loved. Laughed until you cried. And somewhere along the way, you found yourself in a relationship, a marriage, a friendship, a family bond that slowly, quietly began to take more than it gave. And here is what I want to acknowledge. You are not here because you were weak. You are here because you were generous. You loved deeply. You gave the benefit of the doubt again and again, because that is who you are. That is wisdom wearing a very human coat. But something shifted, didn't it? Maybe it was a specific moment. Or maybe it was just a slow accumulation of mornings where you woke up feeling smaller than when you went to sleep. And now you are here asking yourself, what do I do with all of this? And does any of it make sense? Yes, it does. All of it makes complete psychological sense. And that is exactly what we are going to explore together today. To understand why your silence is so disruptive to a narcissist, you first need to understand what a narcissist is actually made of. Not in a clinical, textbook sense. In a human sense. Psychologists call it narcissistic supply. Think of it like this: imagine a person who has a hollow space inside them. Deep, dark, and genuinely frightening to them, and they spend their entire life trying to fill it from the outside. Admiration fills it. Control fills it. Your tears fill it. Your anger fills it. Your desperate need for their approval fills it. Even your silence, when it is confused and searching and waiting for them to notice, that fills it too. Everything you feel, every reaction you have, every word you say, it feeds that hollow space. Not because they are evil necessarily, but because somewhere in their psychological development, usually in childhood, something broke. They never learned how to generate a sense of worth from within themselves. So they learned to extract it from the people around them. This is why they seem to know exactly how to push your buttons. It is not an accident. It is an unconscious expertise refined over a lifetime of getting people to react. Because reaction means supply. When you react, when you cry, when you argue, when you beg for an explanation, you are handing them exactly what they need. You are filling the tank. And when you stop, when you go quiet, the tank starts to run empty. And that is when things get interesting, and sometimes uncomfortable. Which brings us to the second point. There is a woman I want to tell you about. I will call her Margaret. Margaret is 67 years old. She spent 31 years married to a man who, on the outside, was charming, generous, the life of every party. But behind their front door, she walked on eggshells every single day. She learned to shrink herself, her opinions, her laughter, her needs, to keep the peace. When Margaret finally made the decision to disengage, not to leave immediately, but simply to stop arguing, stop explaining, stop trying to make him understand, something unexpected happened. He escalated. He became louder, more provocative, more desperately interested in her opinion. He started asking her questions he had ignored for years. He began noticing things he had dismissed for decades. Margaret called this period the unraveling, and in a psychological sense, that is exactly what it was. Here is why. A narcissist's sense of self is almost entirely dependent on what is called external validation. Their self-image is not built from the inside out. It is constructed from the outside in, like a mirror made of other people's reactions. When you go silent, you remove the mirror, and without the mirror, they cannot see themselves clearly. They begin to panic, not always visibly, but internally. The foundation shakes. Psychologists sometimes describe this as narcissistic injury. It is not the same as hurt feelings. It is a deeper destabilization of their entire sense of who they are and how much power they hold. Your silence says, quietly but unmistakably, you no longer have access to me. And that, to a narcissist, is terrifying. Now, I want to pause here and be very clear about something, because this is the part that most people get wrong. There are two very different kinds of silence. There is silence as a weapon, the cold shoulder, the punishment, the calculated withdrawal designed to make someone feel bad. This kind of silence is reactive. It lives in anger. It is fueled by the need to hurt. And honestly, it still gives the narcissist something to work with because it is still a performance. It is still about them. And then there is silence as a sanctuary. This is the silence we are talking about today. This silence is not about them at all. It is about you. It is the decision to stop pouring your precious energy into a well that will never be full. It is choosing, sometimes for the first time in years, to keep your inner world for yourself. Think of it like this. You have a beautiful garden. Your thoughts, your feelings, your peace of mind. For years, you have left the gate open and someone has been wandering in and out, stepping on the flowers, leaving a mess, and then wondering why the garden isn't flourishing. Sanctuary silence is closing the gate, not out of hatred, not out of revenge, out of love for yourself and for everything still growing inside you. This silence is not cold, it is warm. It is you wrapping your own arms around yourself and saying, I am worth protecting. And here is the beautiful irony. When your silence comes from that place, from genuine peace rather than anger, it is actually more unsettling to the narcissist because they cannot grab onto it. They cannot turn it into an argument. They cannot make it about something you did wrong. It is simply your dignity, quiet and unshakable. Let me explain something called the cycle of narcissistic abuse, because understanding it might be one of the most relieving things you ever read. The cycle goes like this. It begins with what psychologists call idealization, the honeymoon phase where you feel seen, cherished, special. This is real to you, even if it is a performance for them. Then comes devaluation, the slow, subtle, sometimes sudden shift where you can never quite do enough, say the right thing, or be who they need you to be. And then comes discard, emotional withdrawal, cruelty, or abandonment, until they need you again, and the cycle begins once more. What keeps this cycle running? Your responses. Your hope, your willingness to go back, try harder, explain more clearly, love more fiercely. Each time you re-engage, you press play on the cycle. Not because you are foolish, because you are human and you loved someone, and humans are wired to seek connection and resolution. But here's what the cycle actually costs you. Research on chronic emotional stress shows that prolonged exposure to unpredictable, invalidating environments does real damage to your nervous system, your sense of self, your ability to trust your own perceptions. This is sometimes called complex trauma. It is not dramatic or extreme. It is quiet. It is the feeling of always being slightly off balance, of second guessing yourself, of not quite being able to remember who you were before all of this. When you choose silence, real, sustained, peaceful silence, you break the cycle, not just for them, primarily for you. Your nervous system begins to regulate. The constant low, level alarm that has been running in the background of your life starts, slowly, to quiet down. You begin to hear yourself think again. And what you think, you may find, is far wiser and far more loving than you remember. I want to speak directly to a fear that I suspect some of you are carrying right now. The fear that choosing silence means giving up. That it means you are letting them win. That you are swallowing your truth and saying, in effect, that what they did to you doesn't matter. I need you to hear this clearly. Silence is not surrender. Silence is strategy. And more than strategy, it is survival. And more than survival, it is the beginning of something new. When you stop spending your energy trying to get a narcissist to understand you, apologize to you, or finally see you, something remarkable happens with that energy. It comes home. It comes back to you. And you can use it for something it was always meant for, your own life. I think of a woman named Ruth, 71, a retired school teacher, who told me something that has stayed with me. She said, I spent 20 years trying to explain myself to someone who had already decided who I was. The day I stopped explaining, I started existing. That is not giving up. That is the most radical act of self-respect available to you. Psychologically, what is happening in this moment is that you are beginning to shift your locus of control. A concept developed by psychologist Julian Rotter. From external to internal. Instead of measuring your worth by whether they finally acknowledge it, you begin to locate your worth inside yourself. In your history. In your kindness. In your survival. In your long, complicated, beautiful life. This is not something that happens overnight. But it begins with one quiet decision. The decision to stop explaining yourself to someone who is not listening, and to start listening to yourself instead. I want to close with something that I think you need to hear, not because you don't know it, but because sometimes the most important truths are the ones we forget the most easily. You are not starting over. You are not broken. You are not too old, too tired, or too far in to find your way back to yourself. You are a woman who has lived through seasons that would have folded lesser people in half. You have learned things the hard way that most people never learn at all. And yes, some of what you learned was painful. But pain that you have survived is not weakness. It is data. It is proof. Proof that you are still here. There is something in psychology called post-traumatic growth. It is the documented phenomenon of people who have been through serious adversity, loss, trauma, toxic relationships, and who emerge not just recovered, but transformed, more empathetic, more clear about what matters, more deeply themselves than they were before. That is available to you, right now, at this exact moment in your life. Your silence is not the end of something. It is the beginning. It is the first breath after a very long time of holding your breath. And into that quiet, something gets to grow that has been waiting patiently for years. You. The version of you that knows her own worth without needing anyone to confirm it. The version of you that has stopped shrinking. The version of you that wakes up in the morning and feels, maybe for the first time in a long time, the simple but extraordinary sensation of being at peace with herself. That woman is not gone. She has just been waiting for a little quiet so she could finally be heard. Let your silence be that quiet. Let it be the space where you return to yourself. You deserve that, not someday. Now, before I go, I want to ask you something very simple. If something in this video touched you, if you recognized yourself in any part of what we talked about today, I want you to do one small, powerful thing. I am reclaiming my peace, not for me, for you. Because there is something quietly powerful about writing it down, about saying it, even in a comment box on a screen. It is a small act of declaring to yourself, I have decided. I am worth this. And if you know a woman in your life, a friend, a daughter, a sister, who has been carrying something heavy for a long time, share this video with her. Sometimes the most healing thing we can offer someone is a moment of feeling understood. I will be reading your comments. I always do. and I will see you in the next one. Take good care of yourself. You have earned it.